Commander Lee Hanna felt her heart racing as their small shuttle moved closer to the enormous space station. The galactic convergence stretched before them like a giant crystal palace floating in the darkness of space. Hundreds of alien ships were docked around it, their strange designs glowing with different colored lights. "Everything looks good, Commander," said Park Ji-ho from his seat at the communications panel. His voice was steady, but Hannah could see the excitement in his eyes. "The Galactic Council is waiting for us. They seem very happy to start the cultural exchange." Hannah pressed her face against the window, watching the alien vessels drift past. Some looked like metal flowers, others like twisted spires of glass. She had dreamed of this moment since she was a child, reading about the stars. After 50 years of watching Earth from a distance, the galactic community had finally decided to invite humanity to their most important gathering. The docking process was smooth. Alien technicians guided their shuttle into a berth designed for their ship's size. As they walked through the airlock, Hannah was amazed by what she saw. The station's corridors were wide and tall, with walls that seemed to be made of living crystal. Soft music played from hidden speakers, and the air smelled like flowers from a dozen different worlds. "Welcome, humans of Earth," said a tall, blue-skinned alien who approached them. Her voice was like singing water. "I am Ambassador Veltar of the Aquatic Confederacy. We've been looking forward to meeting you for a very long time." Hannah bowed politely. "Thank you for inviting us. We are honored to be here." The reception hall was bigger than any building Hannah had ever seen. The ceiling was so high, it disappeared into soft, glowing mist. Aliens of every shape and size moved through the space, their voices creating a gentle hum of conversation. Some walked on two legs like humans, others floated through the air, and a few rolled along on multiple limbs. "The cultural exchange begins now," announced Veltar. "Each species will share their most treasured stories. These are the myths and legends that define who we are." The first to speak were the Villani creatures that looked like they were made of golden light. They told beautiful stories about sky dancers who painted the northern lights across their world. When they spoke, images appeared in the air, showing graceful figures moving through colorful clouds. Next came the Threx, who looked like giant insects with jeweled eyes. They spoke in clicking sounds that were translated into human words by their machines. Stories were about great builders who carved entire mountains into perfect shapes. The humans watched in wonder as holographic mountains rose from the floor, showing the incredible architecture of the ancient builders. Other species took their turns. The crystalline collective, beings made of living rock, told of world shapers who could move planets with their thoughts. The Nauteri, who breathed water instead of air, shared tales of deep-sea cities and the wise ones who lived in ocean trenches. Each story was treated as precious folklore. The aliens listened with respect and wonder, even when the tales seemed impossible. They applauded and asked questions, treating every myth as a window into the soul of each species. Finally, it was Earth's turn. Kim Min-ho, their cultural specialist, stepped forward with confidence. He had prepared for months, choosing the best stories from human history and mythology. "Long ago," Min-ho began, "when our world was young, great dragons ruled the skies. They were wise and powerful, breathing fire and hoarding treasure in mountain caves." The alien audience leaned forward, fascinated. Min-ho continued with stories of brave knights who fought monsters, gods who controlled thunder and lightning, and of heroes who sailed across unknown seas to find new lands. He told them about ancient warriors who could split mountains with their swords, about wise kings who united warring tribes, and about magical beings who helped humans learn to grow crops and build cities. The stories painted a picture of humanity's ancestors as brave, curious, and always reaching for something greater. The aliens listened with obvious delight. They whispered among themselves, pointing and nodding. Some even took notes on strange devices that glowed in their hands. When Min-ho finished, the applause was thunderous. Dozens of species clapped, clicked, hummed, or made whatever sound indicated approval in their culture. "How wonderful," said Ambassador Veltar, her voice filled with what sounded like genuine pleasure. "Such creative stories. Your species has such amazing imaginations." "Yes," agreed a representative of the Threx. his translated voice full of enthusiasm. Such wonderful fiction. These tales of mighty warriors and flying beasts are so entertaining. Hannah smiled and bowed gracefully, feeling proud of how well the presentation had gone. But something in the way Veltar said the word fiction made her pause. There was a weight to it, a meaning that seemed deeper than simple appreciation for storytelling. The alien's large, dark eyes met hers for just a moment, and Hannah felt a strange chill. It was as if Veltar was studying her, looking for some kind of reaction that Hannah didn't understand. The feeling passed quickly as other aliens approached to congratulate the human delegation. But that one word echoed in Hannah's mind as the evening continued. Fiction. Why had it sounded so important? For 3 days, Commander Lee Hannah walked through the halls of the Galactic Convergence Station, listening to more stories from different alien species. Each group seemed eager to share their ancient tales, and she found herself drawn to every presentation. But something was bothering her, a feeling she couldn't shake. Late one evening, she found Choi Dae-yoon still working in their assigned quarters. The linguist had papers and glowing screens spread across every surface. His eyes were red from staring at data for hours. "You should get some sleep, Dae-yeon," Hannah said, but he shook his head. "Commander, I need to show you something. I've been writing down every story we've heard, trying to understand the languages and meanings better." He touched a control, and bright images filled the air above the table. "Look at these patterns." Hannah sat down beside him, studying the floating displays. Each screen showed different alien writing with human translations underneath. "The Zephyrians talked about skyburners," Daeon said, pointing to one screen. "They described them as terrible beings who came from the darkness between stars, bringing fire that fell like rain. Entire cities were burned to ash." He moved to another screen. "The Crystalline Collective tells stories about world devourers. According to them, these creatures could eat entire planets, taking everything and leaving nothing but empty space behind." "These are just old stories," Hannah said, but her voice sounded uncertain, even to herself. "That's what I thought too," Daeon replied. "But listen to this." He activated another display. The Notary spoke of the Great Silence. They say it happened when the voice stealers came, and whole sectors of space went quiet. No more signals, no more ships, no more life. Hannah felt a cold feeling growing in her stomach. Different species, different ways of telling stories. "But Commander, look at this." Daeon's fingers danced over the controls, and the displays changed. Now they showed star maps with bright dots marking different locations. "I've been checking the places mentioned in these stories. Zephyrians. Skyburners attack systems here, here, and here." Red dots appeared on the map. The Crystalline Collective's world devourers struck these locations. Blue dots joined the red ones. The Notary's Great Silence happened in these sectors. Green dots filled in more areas. Hannah stared at the map. The dots weren't random. Formed a clear pattern, like ripples spreading out from a stone thrown into still water. "It's the same events," she whispered. "They're all describing the same thing, just from different points of view." "That's not all," Dae-yoon said quietly. "I've been working with the station's computers to translate the time references in these stories. The dates match up perfectly. All of these terrible things happened during the same period, thousands of years ago." The door opened, and Yoon Seo-jin entered. The navigation specialist looked tired and worried. She had been spending her days studying the star charts in the station's library, trying to understand the galactic layout better. "Commander," she said, her voice shaking slightly, "I've been running calculations on the locations Daeon found. The pattern is clear when you map it out properly." She activated her own device, and a three-dimensional map of the galaxy appeared. In the center of the room, thousands of stars glowed like tiny jewels in the darkness. "Look at this," Seo-jin said. "If you trace the locations mentioned in all these stories, they form a perfect expansion pattern. It starts at a single point and spreads outward in waves, like an infection moving through space." Hannah studied the pattern. It was exactly like ripples on water, but these ripples covered hundreds of light years. Whatever had caused this destruction had moved systematically from star to star, leaving devastation behind. "Where does it start?" she asked, though part of her already knew the answer. Seojin's hands were shaking as she zoomed in on the center of the pattern. The image focused on a familiar section of space, showing a yellow star with several planets orbiting around it. "Sol system," Seojin whispered. "Earth." The room became completely silent. Hannah felt like the air had been sucked out of her lungs. She stared at the glowing image of their home star, sitting at the exact center of a pattern of destruction that had spread across the galaxy. "That's impossible," she said, but her voice was weak. "I've checked the calculations 20 times, Seojin replied. "The pattern is perfect. Whatever caused all this destruction, it came from our solar system." Daeon was pulling up more data. On his screens, "Commander, I think these aren't myths at all. I think they're historical records. Aliens have been telling us about real events that happened thousands of years ago." "But that would mean—" Anna stopped, unable to finish. "The thought, it would mean humans did this," Daeon said quietly. "Somehow, some way, humans spread across the galaxy and destroyed everything in their path. The aliens aren't sharing folklore with us or telling us about the worst period in galactic history." Hannah stood up and walked to the window.
Outside.
She could see the lights of alien ships, representatives of dozens of species who had welcomed humanity to their cultural exchange. But now those lights seemed different, almost threatening. "If this is true," she said, "then every species in this station knows exactly who we are. They know what our ancestors did to their worlds, their people. And they've been watching us," Seojin added, waiting to see if we remember. The three humans stood in silence, the weight of this terrible discovery pressing down on them like a physical force. Outside their window, the galaxy continued its ancient dance. But now, it felt like a graveyard of worlds that humanity had destroyed long ago. Hannah lay in her narrow bed, staring at the ceiling of her quarters. The soft lights of the space station created gentle patterns on the walls. But she couldn't focus on anything except the terrible discovery they had made. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the star map with Earth sitting at the center of destruction that had spread across the galaxy. After hours of tossing and turning, she gave up trying to sleep. She put on her uniform and walked quietly through the empty corridors of the station. Most of the alien delegates were resting in their own quarters, following their different sleep cycles. The halls were dimly lit and peaceful, but Hannah felt anything but calm. She made her way to the station's central library, a vast room filled with glowing screens and floating displays. Her diplomatic credentials gave her access to the historical archives, databases that contained thousands of years of galactic history. If the truth was hidden anywhere, it would be here. The search interface was easy to use, designed to work with many different alien languages. Hannah typed in simple words: humans, Earth, Sol system, ancient history. The computer began pulling up files, some so old they had been translated through dozens of different languages. What she found made her feel sick. The records went back 5,000 years. To a time when humans had somehow developed incredible technology. These weren't the humans of modern Earth who had only recently learned to travel between planets. These were different humans, advanced beyond anything her civilization had achieved. The archived footage showed massive human fleets moving through space like swarms of metal insects. Their ships were sleek and deadly, armed with weapons that could crack open planets. She watched in horror as human forces attacked world after world, their technology so advanced that alien defenses were useless. These ancient humans had been conquerors, pure and simple. They showed no interest in peace or cooperation. When they arrived at an alien world, they offered only two choices: surrender or die. Most species chose to fight, and most were completely destroyed. The records showed humans strip mining entire planets, taking everything valuable and leaving behind dead rocks. They enslaved populations, forcing aliens to work in terrible conditions. Any species that showed signs of becoming a threat was eliminated completely. Their homeworlds burned to ash. "No," Hannah whispered, watching footage of human soldiers marching through the ruins of alien cities. "This can't be real." But the evidence was everywhere. The current galactic civilizations were the descendants of refugees, survivors who had fled to the furthest corners of space to escape human expansion. They had spent thousands of years hiding, slowly rebuilding their cultures from fragments and memories. "Commander?" Na turned to see Kung Hun Wu standing in the doorway. The engineer looked as tired as she felt. His hair was messy, and his uniform was wrinkled. "I couldn't sleep either," he said, walking over to join her. "I kept thinking about what we discovered. I decided to do some research of my own." He sat down at another terminal and activated his own displays. "I've been looking at the oldest records I can find, trying to understand what really happened." His screen filled with alien text, symbols that looked like they had been carved in stone. "This is from the Threx archives," he said, one of the oldest surviving documents from the time of the human expansion. The translation appeared below the alien writing. "The smooth skins came from the third world of the Golden Star, bringing death in vessels of metal and flame. Their weapons turned our cities to dust and our people to ash. Only by hiding in the deep places did our ancestors survive the great consuming." "The third world of the Golden Star," Hannah repeated slowly. "There's more," Hunhua said, his voice grim. He brought up another file, this one from the Aquatic Confederacy. It talks about the time when the voice stealers came. That's what the Nautori called humans, because they destroyed communication networks and left entire sectors silent. The records painted a picture of systematic destruction that had lasted for centuries. Human fleets had moved through the galaxy like a plague, consuming everything in their path. Entire species had been wiped out, their homeworlds reduced to empty shells. "But here's the strange part," Hyunwoo continued. "According to all these records, the human expansion stopped suddenly. One day the fleets were there, conquering and destroying. The next day, they were gone. Gone where? No one knows. The records just say that the humans disappeared. Their fleets, their bases, their colonies, everything vanished almost overnight. The survivors waited for years, expecting the humans to return, but they never did." Hannah stared at the data, trying to understand. "So what happened to them? Is ancient humans who conquered the galaxy?" "I think," Hyunwoo said quietly, "they went back to Earth. Maybe they had a war among themselves, or maybe they just decided to stop expanding. But somehow, they not only left the galaxy alone, they completely forgot what they had done." The terrible truth was becoming clear. Modern humanity had no memory of its dark past, but the rest of the galaxy remembered everything. The aliens hadn't invited Earth to join their cultural exchange out of friendship. They had been watching, waiting, testing to see if humans still carried the seeds of their ancient violence. "They know," Hannah whispered. "Every alien in this station knows exactly who we are. They know what our ancestors did to their worlds, their people. And they've been waiting thousands of years," Hyunwoo added, "to see if we would remember. To see if we were still the same species that once terrorized the galaxy." Hannah looked around the peaceful library, thinking about all the friendly aliens who had welcomed them. But now their smiles seemed different. Their kindness felt like something else entirely. They weren't greeting long-lost friends. They were studying their ancient enemies, trying to decide what to do with them. When Hannah entered the cultural hall the next morning, everything looked the same as before. The same colorful banners hung from the ceiling, the same gentle music played in the background, and the same friendly alien faces greeted her with warm smiles. But now she saw everything differently. She watched as her communications specialist, Han Minseok, prepared to share another human story. The aliens gathered around in their usual circle, their various forms of eyes focused on him with what appeared to be eager interest. But Hannah noticed things she had missed before. The way the Threx delegates' antennae twitched when Minseok mentioned ancient human warriors. The slight stiffening of the crystalline collective's representative when he spoke of battles fought with advanced weapons. The quick glances exchanged between different species when humans talked about their ancestors' conquests. Long ago, Minseok was saying, brave human warriors sailed across unknown oceans to discover new lands. They were fearless explorers who conquered vast territories and built mighty empires. The word conquered seemed to hang in the air like a physical thing. Hannah saw several aliens shift uncomfortably, their expressions becoming carefully neutral. They were trying to hide their reactions, but she could see the tension in their postures. When Minseok finished his presentation, the applause was polite, but subdued. The aliens asked their usual questions about human culture, but their voices carried an undertone that Hannah now recognized as fear mixed with curiosity. "Such fascinating stories about your warrior ancestors," commented the Villani representative, her voice like tinkling bells. "They sound very... determined." "Yes, agreed." A Notary delegate, his water-breathing apparatus bubbling softly. "Your species has always been so... ambitious." During the break, Hannah walked through the corridors, her mind racing. She needed to know the truth, needed to understand what was really happening. When she spotted Ambassador Veltar moving alone through a quieter section of the station, she followed. The aquatic being was tall and graceful, her blue skin shimmering under the soft lights. She moved with the flowing motion of someone who had spent most of her life underwater. Hannah caught up with her in a corridor lined with viewing windows that showed the stars outside. "Ambassador," Hannah called out. Veltar turned, her large dark eyes meeting Hannah's. "Commander, how may I help you?" "You know who we are," Hannah said simply, deciding that direct honesty was her only option. The alien's gill slits along her neck fluttered, rapidly a sign of stress that Hannah had learned to recognize. "I do not understand your meaning, Commander." "Myths your people shared 3 days ago," Hannah continued, "about the great silence that fell across distant sectors. You weren't describing legend, you were describing history." Veltar's expression didn't change, but her gill slits continued to flutter. She looked around the empty corridor, then back at Hannah. "And if that were true, then this entire cultural exchange is a lie," Hannah said. "You're not welcoming us to the galactic community. You're testing us." The silence stretched between them like a bridge made of tension. Finally, Veltar's shoulders sagged slightly, and she moved to stand beside one of the viewing windows. "Your species learns quickly," she said quietly. "I suppose we should have expected that." "How long have you known?" Hannah asked, joining her at the window. "Since your species first achieved radio transmission," Veltar replied, her voice barely above a whisper. "We have been watching your world for over a century, listening to your broadcasts, monitoring your technological development." Hannah felt a chill run down her spine.
"You've been watching us for that long?" "We have been debating what to do about the children of our ancient enemies," Veltar continued. "And the discussion has gone on for generations, if some species wanted to
destroy Earth immediately before you could develop space travel. Others argued for patience, wanting to see if you had retained the memories of what your ancestors did." "And what did you decide?" "We decided to test you," Veltar said. "This cultural exchange was designed to see if modern humans remember their past. We wanted to know if you would recognize the stories we told, if you would understand what really happened thousands of years ago." Hannah stared out at the stars, thinking about all the friendly conversations, all the warm welcomes. So none of it was real. Hospitality, the friendship, the invitation to join the galactic community. "The hospitality was real," Veltar said. "Many of us hoped that modern humans would prove to be different from your ancestors. We wanted to believe that your species had changed, had grown beyond the violence and cruelty of the past. But you weren't sure. No, we weren't sure. How could we be? Your ancestors were the most destructive force our galaxy had ever seen. They showed no mercy, no interest in cooperation or peace. They conquered and consumed everything in there." Hannah felt the weight of her species' fate settling on her shoulders like a heavy cloak. "So what happens now that you know we've figured out the truth?" "That depends," Veltar said, turning to face her directly, "on what you do with this knowledge." The alien's eyes were sad but determined. "Some of my colleagues believe that the test is already over, that your discovery of the truth proves you are still the same species that once terrorized the galaxy. They think you should be eliminated before you can spread beyond your solar system. And what do you think?" "I think," Veltar said slowly, "that the real test is just beginning. The question is not whether you remember the past, but whether you will choose to repeat it or learn from it." Hannah looked out at the alien ships surrounding the station, each one representing a species that had suffered under humanity's ancient reign of terror. She understood now that every friendly gesture, every warm welcome had been carefully calculated. The aliens weren't just sharing their culture, they were judging whether humanity deserved to survive. The grand amphitheater was the largest room Hannah had ever seen. The ceiling stretched so high above them that it disappeared into darkness, and the walls curved outward in perfect circles. Thousands of seats filled the space, each one designed for a different type of alien body. Some were for creatures that stood upright, others for beings that floated, and still others for species that preferred to rest in pools of liquid today. Representatives from 57 different species had gathered for the final cultural session. Their eyes, sensors, and various organs of perception were all focused on the small human delegation standing on the central platform. Hannah felt the weight of their attention like a physical force pressing down on her shoulders. She stood at the speaking podium, her hands gripping the smooth metal surface. Behind her, her team waited nervously. Security Chief Lim Jangwan kept his hand near his weapon, though Hannah knew it would be useless against the massive fleets surrounding the station. Cultural Attach Kim Minho held his prepared presentation, ready to share more human stories about ancient heroes and mythical creatures. But Hannah had made a different choice. She looked out at the sea of alien faces, seeing the careful way they watched every human movement. Some species had multiple eyes that tracked independently. Others had sensors that could detect heartbeats and breathing patterns. A few had abilities she didn't even understand. All of them were studying the humans with the same intense focus. Honored delegates, Hannah began, her voice carrying clearly through the amphitheater's perfect acoustics. I stand before you today not to share myths, but to speak truth. A ripple of movement went through the audience. Several aliens leaned forward in their seats, while others seemed to tense up. She saw Ambassador Veltar in the front row, her large eyes fixed on Hannah's face. We know who our ancestors were, Hannah continued. We know what they did to your peoples thousands of years ago. The reaction was immediate. A low buzz of conversation filled the air as aliens spoke to each other in dozens of different languages. Some representatives reached for communication devices, probably sending urgent messages to their fleets. Others sat perfectly still, as if they had been waiting for this moment. The humans who spread across this galaxy long ago were monsters, Hannah said, her voice growing stronger. They conquered your worlds, enslaved your people, and destroyed everything that stood in their way. They showed no mercy, no kindness, no interest in peace. The amphitheater had become completely silent. Even the soft background music had stopped. But those humans were not us, Hannah continued. Modern humanity evolved from those who remained on Earth, those who chose a different path. We are the descendants of humans who never left our home world, who never participated in the terrible things that happened across the galaxy. She looked directly at the council members seated in the front rows. We cannot undo the past. We cannot bring back the worlds our ancestors destroyed, or the lives they took. We cannot erase the pain and suffering they caused, but we can choose to be better. Words, came a voice from the audience. Elder Zix3 of the Crystalline Collective stood up, his body made of living rock glowing with inner light. Your words are easily said, young human, but how do we know you speak truth? How do we know you are not the same species that once terrorized our galaxy? The question hung in the air like a challenge. Hannah felt the eyes of every alien in the amphitheater focused on her, waiting for her answer. Because she replied, we came here unarmed, despite knowing you could destroy us. We came here to learn, to share, to join a community we once terrorized. That is not the choice of conquerors. You came here because you were invited, called out another voice. No choice. We had a choice, Hannah said firmly. We could have refused your invitation. We could have hidden on Earth, pretending we didn't know about the galactic community. Could have built weapons and prepared for war. Instead, we came here with open hands and honest hearts. The debate that followed lasted for hours. Representatives from different species stood up to argue their positions. Some called for immediate action against Earth, demanding that humanity be eliminated before it could spread beyond its solar system. Others argued for giving modern humans a chance to prove themselves different from their ancestors. The risk is too great, declared a representative of the Threx, his insect-like body clicking with agitation. We cannot allow the children of our destroyers to grow strong. But if we destroy them without giving them a chance, countered A. Villani Delegate, then we become the monsters we once fought against. The arguments went back and forth, sometimes heated, sometimes philosophical. Hannah and her team stood silently through it all, knowing that their fate was being decided by beings whose ancestors had suffered under ancient human rule. Finally, the formal vote was called. Each species cast their decision through their communication devices, and the results appeared on screens throughout the amphitheater. 31 species voted for cautious engagement with humanity. 26 voted for preemptive action. The margin was narrow, but it was enough, as the human delegation prepared to leave the station. Ambassador Veltar approached Hannah one last time. Her blue skin seemed to shimmer with emotion. "You've bought your species' time, Commander," she said quietly. "Use it wisely. The galaxy will be watching everything humanity does from now on." Hannah nodded, understanding the enormous responsibility that now rested on her shoulders and those of every human alive. They would return to Earth, not as celebrated heroes, but as guardians of a fragile peace that could be shattered by a single wrong move. The shuttle departed the Convergence Station, carrying with it the hopes and fears of two civilizations, one trying to atone for ancient sins, the other trying to believe in the possibility of redemption.